It's always great to be back at DLD, particularly because I have such great friendships here. Today I'm going to speak to you a little bit about how a consciousness-based approach can actually restore health, bring about healing, and even reverse the aging process. What she didn't tell you is I'm 150 years old. So I want to start by saying right now that there are three worldviews competing at this moment on the nature of what we might call fundamental reality. So the first one I mentioned because it's really not valid anymore. The first worldview is what's called dualism. There's mind and there's the physical world. That worldview is not scientifically tenable anymore because it leads to all kinds of conundrums. It violates the laws of thermodynamics, it violates the laws of conservation of energy, and no one can explain how mind interacts with matter. So that worldview is no longer scientifically tenable. The second worldview is that of materialism, or what we might say monistic materialism, which means everything is physical and mind is a byproduct of matter. The problem with that worldview is that as we look deeply into the nature of matter, we start to go to a level where matter becomes an activity, where matter doesn't, in fact, come out of matter. Hans-Peter Duer, the former director of Max Planck Institute, who passed away just recently, by the way, we met him in Munich last time I was there, he had a quote, "Matter is not made of matter." Most of the universe is invisible dark energy and dark matter, and the remaining 4% that is material, which means made up of atoms, of that only 0.01% is now the visible universe. But atoms are made of particles, and particles are waves, and unlike particles, which have units of mass and energy, waves exist only as possibilities in mathematical space. So that's the problem with the worldview, which says that the universe is material. It appears material through our senses, but that's a great mystery why it does, because what goes to your brain in every moment of perception is an electrical current. Right now you're seeing me, there are photons coming to your eyes, they're setting off action potentials to your brain, and there's neurochemistry in your brain, but you experience a three-dimensional world in space and time, evolving in time. How does that happen? Well, that's called the hard problem of consciousness. No one knows. So we're left with only one worldview, and that worldview is that the universe is consciousness and its modulations. Now, certainly this is not a popular mainstream worldview, but recently I've been talking to a lot of physicists, including cosmologists, biologists, mathematicians, and we're discovering that slowly this worldview is gaining credibility. By consciousness, I don't mean mind. By consciousness, I mean the awareness in which we experience mind. By consciousness, I mean the awareness in which we experience our body, the awareness in which we experience this physical world. And of course, no one can locate this awareness. You can't find it in the brain, you can't find it in the body. If I have a few moments at the end of my talk, I might give you a taste, with your permission, into what awareness is. So this worldview says there's only awareness and its modulations. And its modulations come in the form of sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. By sensations, I also mean sense perceptions, sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell. which gives us the experience of this world, and then, of course, images and consciousness, feelings, emotions, and thoughts. If this worldview is correct, then everything, including the universe and your biology, is in activity in awareness. So your biology, your biological organism, is not a material thing, but an activity in awareness. And this activity, of course, is eating, breathing, digestion, metabolism, elimination, the world we experience through our five senses, and our inner world of thoughts, feelings, emotions, desires, memories, instincts, drives, imagination, creativity, and choice. So this brings us to looking at the body as a process, not as a thing. Looking at the body as, you might say, a verb and not as a noun. In fact, the more we look at the universe, the more we realize that in nature, in the universe, there are no nouns. Nouns are conventions of language, but they're not actually descriptions of nature. So this is what I've just told you. Your body is a process which is governed by these activities that exist in awareness, in consciousness. The physical body that you're using right now is not the physical body that you walked in with a little while ago because of all this activity. 98% of all the matter in your body today is not the matter that was there a year ago. This body that I'm using right now to give you this lecture is my year 2015 model. And the last time I came to this building, I brought the same suitcase, but not the same physical body. The body is a process in awareness. And I hope to give you a little taste for this. And so we go back to the ancient wisdom traditions. They say that there's a universal domain of pure potentiality, which is universal consciousness, that in a way, interacting with itself manifests as the collective domain, what Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychologist, called the unconscious, the collective unconscious, which is in a way the collective supraconscious, because it's influencing every thought that you have, every intention that you have, is conditioned by your environment and your history and your mythology and so many other factors that no one actually has a mind that is free of conditioning. And this becomes the personal domain of our consciousness. Sorry, I'll go back. The personal domain of our consciousness, which manifests as mind, intellect, and ego, which ultimately expresses itself as the energy, information, and physical stuff of our body. Okay, so I've summarized a lot of information in a very short time, because we do have a little bit of time. Based on this model, we conducted a study at a course that we give about twice a year or 3 times a year, which is a 1-week retreat where we have people participate in certain practices, some of which include mindfulness, but they include many other things. And we collaborated while we did this retreat with the following institutions, and this is our center. And so we had these collaborations at Mass General Hospital, the Blackburn Lab, which is a Nobel laureate, Elizabeth Blackburn, UCSF, University of California, Mount Sinai, the Icahn Institute here in Genomics, and the Scripps Translational Institute. And we measured everything during the retreat with digital monitoring of heart waves and brain waves and blood pressure. And this is very easy now with devices, of course, that you're familiar with, the size of a Band-Aid, which can instantly pick up brain activity and heart activity. And what we found was that the effects of meditation, and I'll describe what kind of meditation, were instantaneous. And we also measured cellular aging. We measured cellular aging. We measured the brain and nervous system activity. We measured gene expression, gene networks, and also the microbiome activity with something called metabolomics, which means 100,000 metabolites that are produced by your genes and by your microbiome in a given day. And what we discovered was, and this was a control study, by the way, so we also had people relaxing at our resort, not participating in the retreat. And in our retreat group, people practiced mindfulness, as explained in this wheel of awareness, mindfulness of sensory experience, sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell, awareness of the body, and including the interior of the body, awareness of mental space, feelings, sensations, thoughts, and images, and awareness of relationship. So this is known as the wheel of awareness, as described by Buddha originally. The hub of the wheel is awareness itself, and the rim of the wheel is all the things that you can be aware of. In addition, they practice self-inquiry and self-reflection. Who am I? What do I want? What's my purpose? They kept a gratitude journal. They practiced a mantra technique, and they had a contemplative practice on what is the difference between being and experience, something that I want to take everybody here through in a few moments. The understanding the difference between what is called actual and what is perceptual. In 4 days, we had many kinds of evaluations, including psychological evaluations. We saw an increase in the experience of love, compassion, joy, equanimity. But what was most surprising was that we saw within 4 days an increase in the length of telomeres, which are markers for biological aging, an increase in the enzyme telomerase by about 40% in 4 days. Now, fortunately, we had saved the blood, so we looked at the entire genome, and what we found was all the genes that actually increased wellness, regulated biological activity, wound healing, platelet aggregation, activation, positive regulation of heart. You can see some of these gene activities upregulated 17 times baseline value, whereas the genes that were responsible for stress, defense response, positive regulation of chemokine production, inflammation, all were downregulated. So susceptibility to heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's was influenced. What we found was that genes do not act by themselves. They act as networks that regulate other networks and are regulated by other networks. The impact on gene expression is systemic. And in addition, we looked at the microbiome, which, of course, as you know, is 90% of the DNA in your body. And the microbiome traffic from the gut to the brain is 90 times more from the gut to the brain than from the brain to the gut. So when you say trust your feelings, your gut feelings actually are more accurate because they haven't yet learned how to doubt their own feelings. The impact on gene expression and networks of gene expression in self-regulation was in the direction of overall wellness. Okay, so these benefits were maintained in those who had learned these practices even 1 month after they left and 10 months after. So much so that now at the Mount Sinai Carl Icahn Institute, under the guidance of Eric Schadt, we are developing a signature. So it'll be a gene signature that can tell you through a simple blood test whether you practice meditation or not, and how deeply you are in meditation, just by looking at the gene signature. This has never been done before, and so this is a unique thing, and now, of course, other people are finding that as your mind settles down, your people in your environment also gain the benefit. So in Patanjali, in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Patanjali says when someone is perfectly established in peace consciousness, then all beings around them cease to feel hostility. This is a study published in Nature where people were meditating and there were cells that were cultured from mouse genes in a cell, and a wireless-powered optogenic designer cell implant, the cells, the genes change their activity in the direction of well-being. And through a wireless transmission of the human brain to the mouse genes. Another study, human thoughts to switch on genes in another species, but it's not thoughts, it's the absence of thought, the awareness that is switching on the genes. The headline is slightly misleading. Okay, so this is a paper that we just published last month on gratitude and spiritual well-being in heart failure patients, where people kept a journal of gratitude at the end of the day, and all the inflammatory markers in their biology changed. This study was just published, and we can see that other than psychological benefits, gratitude also had an effect on decreasing inflammation and mortality from heart disease. Another sign of what happens in your biology as you experience not only silence, but love, compassion, joy, and equanimity, which are the 4 divine qualities mentioned in Buddhist literature. So now we are looking at the entire spectrum of human biology, mind, brain, genome, and microbiome, and we are now in a process of a 6-day program that uses a systems biology approach, which includes balancing circadian rhythms, meditation, a plant-based diet, detoxification, massage, and all the therapies that one uses in the ancient system of Ayurveda. This systems approach suggests that consciousness is fundamental, it is non-local, it is holistic, it is complementary in that it is both the source of mind and matter, that mind and matter are complementarities in the same way as wave and particle are, that in fact we may have to look at the entire theory of evolution in this light, that evolution may be driven by consciousness, and the evolution of species is actually a form of evolution of species of consciousness, and in fact the evolution of the universe is the evolution of mental and perceptual phenomena in consciousness. This is a deeper understanding now that consciousness may be the fundamental ground of the universe, more fundamental than space-time and gravity, because all those experiences are also in consciousness. As I said, this is a radical approach, but these are the 5 most important things that restore balance in biology: sleep, meditation, movement, emotions, and nutrition. I mention nutrition because most of the nutrition nowadays is from manufactured food, which contains petroleum products, and of course also genetically modified organisms. And if you understand now that the human body is an ecology of the entire planet, then you can see how manufactured, processed, GMO'd, petroleum-containing food will damage the ecology. In fact, our systems biologist researcher tells us that 30% of the microbiome in the Western world has disappeared because of the use of pesticides, GMO, and antibiotics. And this could be as much a threat to human extinction as climate change. Where are we going in the near future? I think with the understanding of epigenetics, the connection between mind, brain, genome, and microbiome, we now see that an emerging paradigm is something we have to look at. It's not just neuroplasticity. We can see that the biological markers of aging, which I mentioned just now, telomerase, telomeres, inflammatory markers, but even things like blood pressure, bone density, body temperature regulation, heart activity, hormone levels are all under the influence of consciousness. So, there are many devices now in the market which measure some aspects so that we can quantify this, and there are more devices coming that will help you bioregulate your whole biology through mental practices, or we should say awareness practices. This was my last book with Harvard neuroscientist and geneticist, Superbrain. Our next book is coming out in a few months, Super Genes, which means only 5% of disease-related gene mutations are fully penetrant. The rest are under your influence. So this is what I wanted to present to you, but if you wish, I can take you through a 5-minute process to give you a deeper understanding between experience and being, okay? May I do that? Okay, so before we do that, I want you to try something. As you're listening to me right now, I want you to become aware of who is listening. So as you're listening to me, become aware of yourself. So what you're experiencing now is being. Not feeling, not thinking, not speaking, not doing, being. So being is the fundamental nature of existence. In wisdom traditions, being, existence, awareness are all the same thing. Being, existence, awareness are the same thing. You are not a person. You are the awareness in which you experience your personality. Is that clear? What we call a person, Deepak, you, Josie, is an experience in awareness. The person is constantly changing. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, desires, the molecules of the body. You don't have the same body that you had when you were a teenager or a baby. You won't have the same body tomorrow. Your thoughts are changing, your emotions are changing, but they all happen in the ground of being. That ground of being is you. When you get in touch with that, that's not a thought. It's the awareness in which a thought comes. And it's the awareness in which the thought disappears. It's the awareness in which a feeling comes. It's the awareness in which the feeling disappears. It's the awareness in which the molecules of the body arise and then subside. So the great wisdom traditions have said, if you get in touch with this part of your being, it'll be your ticket to freedom. Now let's close your eyes for a minute. Perhaps uncross your feet. Okay. And what I want you to do is understand being from your own experience, not because I'm saying anything, but from your own experience. So just become aware at this moment of sound, including the sound of my voice. Where are you experiencing this sound? There's no sound in your brain, but you're experiencing a sound. What or who is experiencing this sound? I think in your own experience, you can say to yourself, I am experiencing the sound. Please say that to yourself mentally. I am experiencing the sound. Perhaps you can listen to another sound when I'm not speaking. There's the humming of the air conditioner. Who or what is experiencing that sound? It's what we call I am. I am is the awareness in which that sound is being experienced. Please notice that the sound is intermittent. Even the sound of my voice, it's there, and then it's not there. But I am is there, whether the sound is there or not. I am is present when there is sound. I am is present when there is no sound. And now let's try something else. Become aware of the sensations in your body. You'll see that the sensations are intermittent. Perhaps become aware of your body touching the furniture, or consciously put your awareness in your hand, anywhere. Tell yourself, I'm aware of sensations. Ask yourself, where is this I am that is having this experience? And notice that the sensations come and go, but I am is present whether there are sensations or absence of sensations. This, by the way, applies to any sense perception: sound, touch, sight, taste, or smell. Now become aware of an emotion. In fact, you can evoke the emotion if you want. Think of someone that you love and feel the emotion. You have an experience, and notice how you can't hold on to that emotion. It comes, it goes, it comes, it goes. It's intermittent. But I am, or being, is present both during the emotion and in the absence of the emotion. Let's move to one more experience. Evoke an image in consciousness, perhaps the image of a beautiful sunset on the ocean, or a red rose. You can see that the image comes and goes. It's intermittent, you can't hold on to it. But I am, or being, is present both in the presence of the image and in the absence of the image. It should be obvious to you that all experience is in time, but being is not in time. All experience is intermittent, but being is continuous. Now just become aware of being aware. Be aware of being. Ask yourself, does being have a location? Does being weigh anything? Is being 16 years old, 10 years old, 20 years old, 80 years old? Does being have a gender? Does being have a nationality? Does being have a religion? And the answer should be obvious to you just through your own self-inquiry. Being is not experience. Being is the ground of all experience, where experience arises, where experience is experienced, and where being is also the source where experience subsides. Everything that arises and subsides is in time. But being is not in time. And being is our identity. So now you may slowly open your eyes. And the point of this exercise for you to see for yourself that the awareness of a thought is not a thought. That the awareness of an emotion is not an emotion. That the awareness of the experience of the world through the five senses is not the world. That the awareness of your body is not the body. And yet, without that awareness, there would be no experience. This is really not mindfulness, this is awarefulness, in which the mind arises and subsides. When we go to this level of experience, which is not an experience, because it's the source of all experience, that's when the body begins to go into self-regulation or homeostasis. The research we did on gene expression, on homeostasis, on biological activity, on the microbiome, on the relationship between mind, brain, body, gene, microbiome, was based on this very fundamental idea that awareness is fundamental. Right now, if you look at science, there are two fundamental open questions. The first is, what's the universe made of? What's the stuff of the universe? And every scientist agrees that whatever the stuff of the universe is, it's not stuff. It's nothing. The debate is about what is the nature of nothing. That's the first open question in science. The second open question in science is, where does awareness come from? Is there a biological basis for awareness? And it seems that awareness is fundamental. It has no location, it is not in time, it is being. And your being is also the being of the universe, which is not really a brand new idea. It's been there in wisdom traditions, at least in Vedanta, where Atman is synonymous with Brahman. The self of the individual is also the self of the universe. This has huge implications for how we do science, because right now science is based on what is called subject-object split. It creates wonderful technologies, but it comes with all kinds of side effects: mechanized death, drones, atomic bombs, food that is not natural, every possible thing that will ultimately lead to extinction of species, because it's based on I am the observer and that is the observation. We need a new science which is more holistic, which says subject and object are unified at the source, because everything is being and its modulations. Subtle modulations that we experience as mind, and then more dense modulations that we experience as the physical body and the physical universe. The word health, the word healing, the word holy are actually the same word. Health or healing is the restoration of the return of the memory of wholeness. We can divide it, and then we can study it, but in reality, there is a unified wholeness that is the universe, and you and I are microcosms of that unified wholeness. So I hope I've given you a little bit of glimpse of where the future of science could go if we begin to see that a consciousness-based approach to health and healing is possible, and I've shown you a little bit of the data. Thank you very much.